Hi, I'm Holly, I'm a writer, and today I'm going to be talking about some books that I've acquired recently. Some of these actually, they were like free or whatever, but I'm going to just go through them because there's a little stack that I need to put away on my shelf and I don't know where I'm going to put them yet. So I might as well do something with them, and this is that. The first one I've started reading, I'm going to just go right in with it. It's this one, The Last Days of Marilyn Monroe by James Patterson and Imogen Edwards-Jones. James Patterson, if you don't know by now, he uses a ghostwriter, okay? He uses a lot of ghostwriters. If you ever see his name and somebody, they wrote the book, basically. That's like how it goes. He tends to outline them and then they have like a style that they have to follow, and that's how he does his books. I don't know how many books he actually writes, if any now. I'm sure at the very beginning he did write quite a few, but if you look at, I actually made a TikTok that might be out by the time the thingy, but there's like, this is his books, his lists of books that he's made. So it's just not physically possible for one person to do that. This one, I was kind of curious because I was like, first of all, how did you know that I was like in the mood to learn more about Marilyn Monroe? How did you know that? Because I love a little bit of Marilyn, I really do. Specifically, I love learning about the stuff about her besides the like, you know, the fact that she was a very beautiful woman, because she was a very complex person and a lot of people did put her in a box. And I think that that's like one of the things that a lot of people just still to this day don't really know about her, is all of the different complexities that she had as an individual, because she was beautiful. She's like one of the most beautiful women ever, right? And so people only think about it like that. I actually read 90 pages of this yesterday. It's really easy to read, but it reads kind of like, again, it's like that sort of non-fiction where it's almost like a story, but it feels a little weird because it's not reading it like a story in the sense that like relaying events that happened in a very factual way. There's like thoughts that people have, and I'm assuming that those thoughts came from sources, but the sources aren't like, there's no footnotes. So while the sources are in the back of the book, it's impossible for me to know if like any assumptions were made. Like, I just don't know, because unless I read through every single source and then go back to all of the bits in italics to see if they were just quotes from the sources, it's like really weird to read. And so I do have moments where I'm like, but also it's like, you know, whatever. It's interesting, and yeah, especially like I'm at the bit where she is in a relationship with Joe DiMaggio, and it goes a lot into his like discomfort with the nature of her as an individual, and it also has shown the sort of stuff about her so far with not minding being seen as sexual, because like what's wrong with sex, but also her starting to want people to not just see her as that, which there's a quote from I think it was Life magazine that she did an interview where she was like, people don't see me, they just see my face, or something similar. I'm like quoting that badly, but essentially like towards the end of her life when she did commit suicide, she really didn't feel like people knew her, and she actually had an attempt that she made which she said was an accident, but it's the same way that she ended up years later actually dying. And so she essentially had like very few people in her life that she felt actually knew her, and when she lost those people, it was devastating for her. Like, it really affected her a lot more. So it's just kind of interesting. I don't know again how accurate it is, but it's at the very least there's a source list, and I feel like with stuff like this, if you have an interest in a topic, you read a book, you then read the sources off of the list, or you read a few of the like stuff around it. So yeah, this one, it's not bad by any means, and it is really easy to read. As I said, I read 90 pages. I read like 60 pages the first day. I was in a reading slump because I was trying to read The Catcher in the Rye for the podcast, and I just was not vibing with it this second time that I read it, because I don't tend to reread books unless I really like them, and I only reread it for the podcast, so it wasn't one that I actually was excited to reread. And so the result of that is that I was just like, for like 2 weeks, I just was like dancing around it. But I ended up finishing it like 100 odd pages in like one day, because I was like, I need to get this done. And this one, it's not like that. This one, I'm pretty excited about it, and I think I will probably get this finished quite soon. So it's not bad. It's just, it's, as a non-fiction book, it's like a little weird to talk about it, especially because it's about a woman who did obviously have a pretty miserable life, but also a lot of joy in her life, and it's nice to see, but it's also really depressing, and so it's hard to talk about it. But I feel like it's worth it. I got this at like Tesco because I was shopping with my mum and I needed a break because I was getting really overwhelmed. And I ended up buying this because it was like the one of the other ones, the one at the bottom of this pile that I've got. I also got that because these were the only 2 books that I was interested in. I was like, of course they're books I'm actually interested in. So yeah, I don't know if it would have been worth it if I was like on a budget and I was looking for like one book to satisfy me for the rest of like the month or something. But for what it is, I'm enjoying this, and I do think that it's a good jumping off point. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see when I like look into more sources and actually get like, you know, an idea of whether or not these quotes, because again, it is sort of in a narrative style. So it's a little weird. But that is the first one. And then the next one is, I spoke about Jurassic Park on the podcast, and I really like Jurassic Park, right? And so this is the Andromeda Strain. This, I'm pretty sure, I haven't actually checked, but I'm like 90% sure that this is what, there's like a TV show or a film or something based off of. I'm assuming that there is, right? This is really weird. I bought this copy and I thought it was going to be like a full, like a regular size book, but it's like one of the, like, you know, which I actually really like. I have ordered a copy of Strangers on a Train by Patricia Highsmith because I kept seeing references to Strangers on a Train. Like, I literally watched like 3 things in a row and read like 1 book. I think it was 2 films, maybe 1 film, 1 TV show, 1 book. And then I saw a TikTok about the Modern Family scene where he talked about Strangers on a Train. And I was like, it was just like one thing after another. And I was like, maybe I should read the book. And then I realized it was by Patricia Highsmith. And I was like, oh, so yeah. So I ordered that, and I think it's supposed to be like this size. Like, I think it's supposed to be one of these like tiny books, which for me, like, this is just such a vibe, right? Like a smaller book that you could in theory fit in your pocket and in your like little bag. Because I could fit it in a little bag if I wanted to. If I wanted to just go out with like my phone and my keys and a book, I could do that. But this is the Andromeda Strain by Michael Crichton. And I don't really know what it's about, but it's, well, let me say, it's 5 prominent biophysicists give an urgent warning, uncontaminated. So basically, I guess there's like something that comes from space that's like a disease. I'm pretty sure I got a TV show or a film. I'm pretty sure. So I was like, this is the one that I would start with after the Jurassic Park stuff, because I actually kind of know what this is. But I liked his style of writing. I thought that it was, dear God, the text is small. I kind of love it, but also, whoa. It's written very much like in like thick black lettering. You don't really see that anymore. It's a bit more crisp. I do like that. And it does smell bookish. But it's, again, for the sort of type of book it is, it's very shiny, like very smooth, which I wasn't expecting. when I saw it. But I don't know. I have no idea what this is about. I know that I really liked the Jurassic Park book. I preferred it to the film, no question. It actually made me able to like the film for the first time because I watched the film and I had a way of watching it because I was like comparing it to the book. I didn't like the film. I watched the film like 4 times and I didn't like it, and then I watched it again and I loved it because of this. The book, which was up there. I think that his style is really easy but enjoyable, and I'm hoping that this will be like that, essentially. And then I'm hoping that I'll be able to watch the whatever it is that I'm pretty sure is based off of this. I don't know, I didn't check, okay? It was just like I saw this while looking at his other books to see what else he had made. But it says, the thriller that shook a generation. And the reviews on the back are from the New York Times, Life, and Library Journal. Apparently it's like terrifying. I just recently finished reading Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. Really enjoyed it. I want to read the rest of her books. So I'm thinking that I might read those like soon. Maybe when I finished Marilyn. Because I did consider reading them before Marilyn, but I really wanted to pick that one up because I don't remember why. I think I saw a post about her, a news like article about her, and it immediately made me think of a story idea based, but not entirely based, off of Marilyn Monroe, and like the idea of how women end up following along with the things that they, you know, have to in order to be known by the patriarchy, and how it ends up being the thing that, you know, destroys them in the end anyway, which is very in line with a lot of the books that I've got planned in the immediate future to write, like in this like little segment of what I'm doing, including Buried in My Rose Garden, which by the way I've written like 24,000 words for. The chapters are getting longer, the quality is, I think, much better. I'm really happy with the last few chapters that I've written, and the only one that I'm not super happy with is chapter 3, but I'm on to like chapter 5, and it's really getting where I want it to be. So after that I have a book about an actress in the 80s. I had a book about 2 actors in like the 90s, and then I wanted to write one about a sort of Marilyn Monroe type, focusing on the idea of sort of isolation caused by the patriarchy and the way that women are viewed as their bodies and, you know, objects of sexual desire rather than as people, and inspired heavily by essentially Marilyn Monroe, because I think a lot of people do still, as I said when I was talking about that one, they do still misunderstand her. So that one came first in the sort of like the ranking of what order of the books I was going to read. But I think the Gillian Flynn ones are going to be next because I am in a bit of a thrillery, a bit of a like a science fiction-y kick. I also read The Three Body Problem recently. Didn't actually love that one, but I do think I kept it because the cover is like, the spine is like bright green and it looks perfect next to my copy of Earthlings. And it wasn't like I hated it or anything. I just didn't love it. Like I read it and I was like glad that I read it, but I didn't want to read the second one, you know? I couldn't connect with it as much as I thought I would. Like there was some moments that I was like, this is really cool, and then I was like, So I'm hoping for more sort of the like, I think that would also maybe be counted as like a thriller in a way, a thrillery science fiction. So I'm hoping that this will deliver what that didn't for me. And then also the Gillian Flynn ones, which I want to read, which is Sharp Objects and Dark Places. Because I am in a bit of a mood for that, and I'm putting off reading the rest of the Philip Marlowe books because I only have one, like I only have the next one, I only have the 3rd book, I don't have the 4th book, so I wouldn't be able to read that one and then buy the next one ready for whenever I'm next ready for it. So I'm waiting until I have the money to do that, to read that one, because I like to have one of those in at the minute, because that's more like noir fiction. But I think that I'm in the mood for like this kind of like darker, thrillery sort of crime, science fiction-y sort of stuff. And yeah, I can't read the Philip Marlowes. I'm putting off reading the Gillian Flynn's a little bit just to read the Marilyn one, but then I want to read this. The next one I need to actually, like, I'm not gonna look it up, but I'm gonna explain why I bought this. So, okay, this book, I genuinely, this book, it says here, right, it's published by Harper Voyager, which, if you don't know Harper Voyager, it's HarperCollins, it's like Harper Voyager, it's, I think that Andy, no, what book am I thinking of that was published by Harper Voyager? There were like a lot of books that I loved that were published by them, which is why I actually, when I was a kid, it's the Robin Hobbs. It's the Robin Hobbs. That's who. Yeah, for me, when I was thinking about like my career potentially as a fantasy author, which is still in the works, by the way, it's just not happening right now. This is very floppy, and the page is very white. This book, I thought, and I think it might still be the case. It might not be the case. I think that this book was initially published potentially independently. Like, I think it may have been self-published to begin with, and then it got like, maybe it got published, like picked up because it did really well. That's the page that I'm looking for. Maybe not then. Because the way that it's like, I don't know. That's what I thought when I did it. I'm not gonna lie, that is what I thought when I bought it, but maybe I'm just wrong. No, I don't think it was. So I don't know why then I picked this up, but I think I may be getting it confused with another book, but it's called Beyond Redemption. And basically this is, I believe, a science fiction-y book, but set in this like, yeah, let me read the thing, because it's hard for me to explain it, right? Because I'm really bad with, you know, faith shapes the landscape, defines the law of physics, and makes a mockery of truth. Common knowledge isn't an axiom, it's a force of nature. What the masses believe is an axiom. But insanity is a weapon, conviction is a shield, delusions give birth to foul new gods. So this world has like a bunch of people who have the ability to create things from their delusions, right? And like change reality. And essentially, I think it is supposed to be like almost like a fantasy science fiction-y type idea, which the elements aren't like necessarily like high fantasy, but more like, what if, you know, like if this had the ability. And I just think it sounded kind of cool, and like, you know, it's, yeah. So there's, oh god, there's a glossary, which is nice. There's a contents page, which I like personally. It's like literally like 500 pages, but it sounded really cool. Like this idea of you know, a world defined by almost like mental illness, right? Whereas the people who have mental illness and have delusions bring things to life. There's an episode of Supernatural called Hell House, and that episode deals with like a similar sort of idea of like people thinking things and it manifests into reality. And that concept is so cool to me, like the idea of reality being changeable by internal thinking. That's cool. So I wanted to read this, and I thought that it was independently published to begin with. Clearly it wasn't, but yeah, I do think it sounds really cool. And I don't know how to talk about it because I've not read it yet, and I don't know where it's gonna go with the plot, but I just thought that sounded cool, right? And again, like the cover, it has like the vibe to me of like not necessarily medieval, but like historical sort of science fantasy, like this idea of the world that we know almost, but not. I just think that's really cool. I love fantasy worlds that have like these differing ideas of what a magic system should look like, because some people, they have, you know, and I will admit that I'm part of this group, the magic where it's like magic happens because people exist in a world where magic is. But then also the idea that individuals can have magic and can manipulate the world around them with it specifically. That's always really interesting to see how somebody comes up with like the politics of a novel with that being the case. I think that a lot of novels that do that, when they fail, it's because they haven't thought through, and so you read it and you think, but what if somebody like this had that? Wouldn't that negate all of the stuff that you're saying? And I think that this sounds like it's gonna have been well done. That's like the vibe that I get. So I'm kind of hopeful about this one. And I am excited to read it, but I don't know when I'm gonna read it because I'm very much not in a fantasy mood right at this exact moment. As I said, I'm in like the more thrillery stuff, and like occasional bits of nonfiction, because I'm also writing about Vietnam for my Substack, which I've spoken about before. If you don't know, I have a Substack. I talk about like real world events and like the certain sort of stuff behind them. So I talked about famine, genocide. I'm going to talk about Vietnam, but from a broader scope sort of perspective. A lot of reading for that. And then I also have a book that I want to read, which is partly for that, but also partly just myself. So I'm spread very thin right now. Don't know when I'm going to read this, but this was actually because I was buying a book that my friend wrote. We actually interviewed her on the podcast. It just came out. It's called It's Not the End of the World by Sophie Riley. I don't have that on me because it hasn't been delivered yet, but I did order that book, and in order to get free delivery, it was cheaper to order some other books to qualify for that. So I got that one, The Andromeda Strain, and I got this one, and then that was free delivery, and it was cheaper, and it was great. So there's that. This next one I didn't buy. The one after that I didn't buy. I didn't buy 3 of the ones in this list. So it's probably nothing. Critical conversations on the women's health crisis and how to thrive despite it. This is nonfiction. My mum got this for me because it's basically a book about how the medical health bias is very much still working against women who seek diagnoses and treatment for the conditions they have. As somebody who's been going through it and who was repeatedly like, hey, this isn't my mental health, this is something different, can you test me? I was told no, for like 2 years. My mum got me this book because she thought it might be helpful to see if it had any tips and also just to feel less alone. She definitely loves a book. She read The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, which she actually didn't believe that I'd read my copy of that when I gave it to her because it hadn't got a crease in the spine. And I was like, yeah, I read it. And I think she actually still has that copy because I had to buy a copy. I had to buy a copy secondhand because I really liked the book. I thought it was a good book. And yeah, I got a different copy. Don't think I prefer it, but it's the one I've got. And essentially, she read that book and then she said, "Is that what life is like for you?" And I was like, "A little bit, yeah." And she was like, so she loves to read things to learn about their experiences. She loves to watch TV shows about other people in circumstances that she will never be in. About, for example, she watched a TV show about this trans woman and was frankly horrified by the way that some people treated this woman. That's my mum. That's how she connects with the world. So I ended up getting given this as a sort of surprise gift. And I'm intrigued. I've been trying to read, I've been trying to research and like read more women's non-fiction. So for example, there's the book The Second Sex by, I should know who that's by, I really should, but I don't off the top of my head. Simone, that might not be right. Whoever it is, The Second Sex, very famous feminist text, pretty self-explanatory title. That is one that I've been trying to read. There is another one that I swear I got and I can't remember what it is, but it should be down there somewhere. A book anywhere? No, apparently not. But I've been trying to read more books and I've been trying to look into more books like that are feminist criticism theory, and books that, you know, that divide. There's the one that came out about like where women stand with the rise in, for example, AI and robotics and like the idea of sex work in the form of those things. There's the book about, I can't remember what it's about, but it's a book that got really successful recently, and I'm sure I'll talk about it in a future video because I'm trying to look into stuff like that. But it's basically, there's like a lot of books coming out about women in this new age, women being sort of pitted against each other, women, you know, being ultimately victims of the patriarchy. This is one of them. I am glad that I didn't have to buy it because non-fiction books, I always hate buying them. They're just usually more expensive and they're not as like enjoyable, especially if like they're a grim topic, you know. They're just like, it's not fun to read that, but also you have to. So it does feel a little bit rough sometimes paying money to go through that, but it is really important, and I am trying to be better at reading more non-fiction in the way of exploring real life issues. And for example, race is also another one. I've already read quite a few for university independently, but I think that I sometimes feel like, because I understand basic concepts, that I don't necessarily need to be sort of told these things, but I do think it's important that we still try, you know, like to, especially because the people who write them are academics, right? Like they don't tend to publish people who aren't usually like, at least like masters, but usually like PhD people. So these are people who've done this their whole life. The book I did read recently, which I thought wasn't great, which I read for that reason, was The Women Who Run with Wolves. That one I thought was terrible. And I'm very glad that I didn't spend money on that and that I got it from the library instead. But I want to read more books, and if they are at the library, I think that would be something I want to do. Like, I want to start going to the library to see if they have non-fiction books, because I think that just, you know, I can always buy a copy if I really enjoy it. I do that all the time. I buy books that I read that I didn't own, but I really enjoyed, and I put them on my shelf, and then they're there to reread when I want to, or just for me to remember them and look through the pages and see things. I just really like it. So there's that. This book my dad bought and then he didn't read it. Typical my dad. He tries, but he just isn't a reader. This is The Ragged Trousered Philanthropists by Robert Tressel. This is a modern classic about essentially Marxism. It says, at the building firm Rushton & Co., the bosses and shareholders get richer and richer while the workmen and their families struggle against poverty, hunger and debt. So essentially, it's... Ooh, that was an image of something. Hello? A little... Don't know what that means. I'm sure I'll understand it when it comes back and I'm actually reading it, but I don't know yet. So yeah, this is just a book, a modern classic about class struggle. And my dad bought it because the guy who wrote it is buried in Liverpool, which is where we're from. I know I don't sound like it. I promise. I was born here. I've lived here like my whole life. Not even in like the posh bits. I'm autistic. I sound like this because my body decides to mask all the time. It's exhausting. But yeah. This book, I don't know, it's about poor people, working class people, and especially I always love working class books about England. I actually just started a second Substack, which isn't about events in the world, it's about myself. Not in like it's about myself. It's called Skint Ambition, which essentially, skint, if you don't know, is like the British word for broke. It's what, you know, but I feel like I mentioned it in the article that skint kind of has like specific connotations of like distastefully poor, you know, like you're not just suffering from a lack of money, you're suffering from a lack of class, right? It's like class in England, if you aren't from England and you're watching this, huge thing, way bigger than just the money. You can be working class and you would never be able, no matter how wealthy you got, to be considered anything more than middle class, because you come from a working class background, so you are working class. It's built into your bones. You cannot get rid of it. Same way that a really wealthy person can lose their money, but that doesn't make them working class. It's this very different social dynamic rather than just a money tier system. Think it's kind of similar to a lot of Europe is like very similar, but in the UK the situation is what it is because obviously colonialism was such a big thing that we partook in. Like we were like the center of the British universe, the British Empire. We saw ourselves as the center of the universe, right? We did see ourselves that way, and therefore it's not just that there's the dynamics between like other countries in Europe, it's the dynamics between the different counties. I'm from the Northwest, I'm from Liverpool. There are a lot of people who would immediately discount me because I'm from Liverpool, and there's a reason why, and this is like the main reason why I don't like it, because my autism automatically, like I can't control the masking. It just happens. Like I wouldn't sound like this if I had the choice, because I am proud of where I'm from and I don't think that it's a bad thing to have the accent of where I'm from. But I physically, like my brain just does it, and it would be an effort to undo it, and I don't know how to do it without feeling like the effort makes me fake. And that's a whole thing. I'm like disenfranchised from my own identity. It's weird, but that's what happens when you live in Britain and you are part of the class system in Britain. And so books like this that show, this was published in, I'm gonna assume, the 1950s. Hello. When was this published? Why is this not like really? 1914. So that's an old book. Like, so the fact that it's been over 100 years, I'm imagining that there's going to be a lot in this that still rings true today. That's not surprising. I think we all know by now, especially if you're watching this video. Chances are, if you're a reader or if you're interested in books, you probably are aware of the fact that things haven't really changed socially. Like, some laws have changed, but a lot of attitudes still have the same ring from 100 years ago, even if tolerance has gotten a little bit better, a little teeny bit better. And I feel like it's just going to be really interesting to read this, and I wanted to, and my dad certainly wasn't going to, so I took it. When he moved, I was like, I'll just put it in my room. So that's what that is. I don't know anything about it, but I've been to this guy's grave, and my dad was like really interested, and also this guy, I'm pretty sure, I can't remember whether it was him or whether it was just other graves, but I think he was buried with like 12 other people because he was that poor when he died. So again, it's interesting to think about, right? This is a lot of the books that I'm talking about are like really grim, and it's, you know, fair enough, but like this book I did buy, and then I wasn't going to read it because that's my bookmark. Might as well leave that in there. This is the first Game of Thrones book, which is, I guess, called A Game of Thrones. The reason why I didn't want to read this is because I kept putting it off. And I was like a little bit intimidating because I heard it was very adult, very, you know. And then I was like, well, I don't really want to read it if the last book isn't out. Because if I get really into it, I'm going to want to read all of the books. And then I'm just going to be like... And I think I had that opinion maybe 10 years ago. Because he hasn't finished the book. So I still want to read this. But I am putting it off. But I already bought it, and then I gave it to my dad, who got really into Game of Thrones for a while. He didn't read it. I'm taking it back. I don't even think you can buy these covers anymore, which is really sad because I know for a fact Dan Howell had these books, right? He had like the box set on his window at one point. The fact that I know that probably outs me as being something, and I'm not ashamed of it. But like, it makes me kind of sad to think that I might have to buy a different version of the books. Or buy them secondhand or something, because like that's how long ago I bought this, and the one still isn't out. But that's what I'm waiting for. I'm not going to go over this because I haven't read it. I've not seen the film, like the show. I've not seen, was there a film? I feel like there might have been. I've not seen any of it. I've not, like, I know the name of like the Lannisters, the Targaryen woman. I know that there's like dragons. I know that Peter Dinklage is in it. That's what I know. But I've heard it's quite complex, and it's a big series, and they're all pretty chunky. So I don't want to start it because, first of all, I have a lot of other books that I would be able to get through faster than this series, and my main priority right now is to read everything that I own, you know? Because as well, I realised that I have like 400 books that I want to read. Books that I've saved that are classics, newer books, new releases, or actual like just books from like 10 years ago or something. Loads and loads of books in various categories, including for research purposes for my books. So I want to get reading, and I feel like reading this when the series isn't finished just feels like a bit of a mistake. But I own it, and I'm going to put it on my shelf because I might as well. And it'll be there for me when I'm ready. And maybe when he's ready. So yeah, actually, you know what, Martin? If you can do me a favour, don't finish the book for a while because I'm not ready. So I would just, or, you know, if you are going to release it, give me like a year's notice so I can get the paperback. But yeah, that's where we're at. I think the next like stuff on my list is I want to read The pipes just did a funny little boing. Sorry. I want to try and read all of the classics I have, although I try and leave a few. This is my problem. I try and leave a few so that I always have something to read next. I did it again, the pipes. It's like my books that I have by certain authors that I really like, I try not to read all of their books at once because then I don't have anything to read by them next. I have like, I think 2 Stephen King books that I haven't read. Don't know what that was. I still have some, I haven't read Lapvona still. And yeah, I've got some classics, but I try and leave, again, this is like my problem. I like to not rush through all of my books all at once. So we're gonna see, but I'm gonna leave this one, but I did buy it years ago. I think maybe like 2014 or something. This one was a gift. This is We Do Not Part by Han Kang. I don't really know what this is about, but she won the Nobel 2 years ago, and I'm trying to read the Nobel winners. I read The White Book, which I didn't like. I've got The Vegetarian, which I mentioned in my bookshelf tour is in like this little trolley next to me because it's a really battered and ugly cover, but I want to read it because I got it for like 99p or something, and I want to read it because it's hers. And The White Book, it's more like poetry, so I thought I would try and read her like full-length prose, you know, like a novel. But I am a little nervous to read it because I didn't like the other one. But I want to give her a go because she did win, and there's one that I think, weirdly enough, this was a gift. I didn't ask for this. This was just a random choice because she won the Nobel. And The Vegetarian I got because it was actually recommended to me years ago. I think when it was like a year old or something, or less than a year old, and the English translation. And it was one of those things where like I want to read them, but now that I'm older and I've changed a little bit, the book of hers that I feel more drawn to is Human Acts, which is, I think, maybe this is the one that won the Nobel. It probably is, right? Although it says it was published in 2025. So maybe it wasn't. Yeah, basically I think it was like Human Acts that won her, because Human Acts specifically, it's hard to know because they just award it to a person, they don't award it to, you know, but I think Human Acts was the one that probably was like the most significant in terms of that, because I think that that's about like violence and humanity in violence. I don't know, this one, it did kind of intrigue me. Like, I decided to read this because it talks about profound love in the face of unspeakable pain, a celebration of life, however fragile it might be. So it's not something that I'm against. And the only thing that puts me off is the fact that I didn't like The White Book. But I'm gonna give it a go. And I don't know what it's about, because why would I know? Why would I know? Why would I know what it's about? Why would I know what anything that I own is about, you know? This one, I can tell you what this one's about. It's about Rasputin and the Romanovs. This is by Antony Beevor. If you don't know, Antony Beevor is one of those names where I was like, I can trust him with my hardback purchase. This I also got at Tesco. If you don't know who Rasputin was, he was a real guy. He was genuinely, I think, like 6 feet 7 inches tall or something like that. He was insanely tall. He had I can't remember the word for it, but he believed that sex brought him closer to God. He was like a priest, but he believed that sex was like a religious act. So he had sex with a lot of prostitutes. But he saved the Queen's son by a telephone call that she made to him while he was dying because he was a haemophiliac. And he lived. The son lived after he was dying because of this phone call. So the Queen vowed by Rasputin. She was like, that guy is amazing, I love him, he's part of this family. But the public didn't like the Romanovs for a lot of reasons, and Rasputin was one of them because he was a really shady guy. Obviously, he was going around publicly having a lot of sex with lots of different people, and he was kind of wild looking. Like, he was kind of a terrifying looking guy, and especially when you consider his height, like... So, you know, Russia is on the brink of civil war. It's on the brink of the revolutions that would happen, and they're in the First World War fighting with no industrial revolution. People are starving, and the royalty are in complete disenfranchisement. Like, imagine, genuinely, like, imagine the caricature of a royal family in a novel or a film about like a revolution against these people because of how selfish and lavish they are. Imagine like the French Revolution. That's what they were going through. And so Rasputin was a part of it, and they had him assassinated. Very famously, he got poisoned and then he got shot, and then they threw him in the river in the middle of winter, and that was what killed him. Because he was alive from the poison and the bullets. And it, like, logically it makes sense, but also imagine you're his assassins and you're just trying to get this guy dead in as least of a sort of conspicuous way as possible to avoid, you know, the humiliation of being associated with him and of the scandal of his death. And then you end up having to throw him in the river because he's just, like, not going down. I wanted to know more because the topic is really fun to me, and it's been a while since I studied it. I studied it at A-level, and I love the Russian Revolution. It's one of my favourite historical things. It's so interesting to me. The politics of it is so interesting, and I just wanted to read this book, and it was Antony Beevor, so I was like, I can probably trust it. But this, let me read the bit for you. But yeah, it's called Rasputin and the Downfall of the Romanovs. And it says Rasputin was a devoted monarchist, not a revolutionary. He had no official position. That's not really important. He contributed more to the fall of the Romanov dynasty than any other individual. The royalty was besotted with him. Yeah, when the revolution broke out in 1917, not a sword was raised in defence. Yeah, so this is an attempt to like debunk, I guess, the mysticism around Rasputin. Fun. But yeah, I don't know what to say about this. It's about Rasputin and his relationship with the Romanovs, which is genuinely very fascinating. It's the most unaware people in the entirety maybe of human history when it comes to the way that they are ruining themselves. Like, genuinely, I think that Marie Antoinette was less dumb for saying the thing about let them eat than these guys. Because like they did so much that was just messed up. Including the fact that his father, by the way, actually put in place, he like wanted to put in place some pretty important policies that would have been better for the people. And then his son got power and he was like, nah, we're not going to do that. So serfdom was still a thing. People were literally slaves, and without any kind of way of making the way out of it. It was an insane sort of cake tier like level of royalty, the church, and then like the peasantry was like right at the bottom. So super interesting to read that and get back into it, and it's not too long. I think it's only like what, 450 pages, 300 pages actually when you get past all these sources, Wow. Something about a hardcover book really loses all of my sense of how long a book is, because the pages are obviously bigger. So yeah, my judgment's really bad sometimes when it comes to books. Sometimes I'm like, it's this many pages and I'm exactly correct. Sometimes I'm very wrong. So that was it. That's all the books. I hope that was interesting. Yeah, I think I'm gonna read Marilyn Monroe, the rest of that. I have the Gillian Flynn ones that I want to read, and then I think I will go in with the Andromeda Strain, and maybe then Beyond Redemption. I think that could be an interesting link from science fiction to like more fantasy. And then I had a few fantasy books that I wanted to get through because they're part of a series and I have like the series, and there were some books that I wanted to read as well, so I might do an updated TBR or something soon, because I don't know if I actually ended up reading all of the books on my TBR video that I did last time. I think I kind of gave up on them because none of them were necessarily like books I had to read for anything, and when my mood shifts I just, you know, why force it? So yeah, and then I'm gonna do a video when I finish the second draft of my book, which I'm on chapter 5 of 14, so I'm not quite halfway through, but I did 3,000 words yesterday and I did 2,500 words the day before. It's like 2 days per chapter basically, and I feel like the second half is a lot stronger, so it's going to need a lot less work, and I write quicker when it needs less work, which is what happened last night. I wrote for like an hour and I did the 2,000 words, and I wrote for like half an hour and I got 1,000 words. So I'm in an alright place with that, but I will do a video updating it, and I think I will probably do a video updating, because I think the reason why I'm in a thriller mood is because mine's not a thriller by any means, but it's a literary crime, so I'm interested in reading books that have those elements, like the Gillian Flynn's, and then again, as I said, like the Marilyn one is essentially book research. Like I'm reading it because of a personal interest, but I also think that it's really informative of that story idea that I had, which I actually had a few images in my Untitled Pinterest board saved that I moved over into the Marilyn one. So there's that, and then I'm reading my friend's book, the podcast co-host Becky. I'm reading her first draft, so I don't know where I'm gonna be with reading, but I will probably do an updated TBR. This is the books that I've got recently for whatever sort of reason, ones that I've picked up in places, ones that I already had but didn't have on my shelf, and the ones that I bought because I wanted to get free shipping. Which overall it does make sense, because if you're planning on buying a book anyway, you might as well get free shipping on it than have to buy it individually and not get free shipping, you know? So I did think it through, and I have some books that I had to buy because I'm going to a book fair, and I got gifts for Christmas and for the birthday, because it's Becky is going to do a table, so I'm going to give her a Christmas and birthday gifts, which happen to be books in this case. One of them because I read it and I was like, she might like this. The other because I saw it and I was like, she will like that. But yeah, that's where I'm at. I might honestly also do a video talking about like beta readers, because I know a lot of people struggle where to find them, and I've had really great feedback from my betas, so I'm gonna do that, I think. But yeah, this is where we're at, and I actually made a video this week, so let's just be grateful, because that's like my mood this week, is just but yeah. Okay, thank you for watching. and bye.